this day of your time as you create time to exist. Allow us to begin this interaction, this day of your time, with the laying down of a few foundational concepts that will allow perhaps more ease of communication within this interaction that your civilization and our civilization have co-created today. First of all, allow us to remind each and every one of you that even though you may be perceiving what you would call a singular identity, a singular entity in this interaction, we are in that sense representative of hundreds, thousands, millions in your terms of counting of consciousnesses that are representative of what you call the association of worlds. And they have in their own manner, telepathically, as you say, plugged into my consciousness for each and any of the interactions we have with you. So understand that while there may be a gathering of individuals on your side, there is a gathering of individuals on our side as well. The idea will be as follows: that we are in many ways extremely excited and interested to be interacting with members of any civilization, including your civilization, for we can learn much in the way of your civilization's offerings to us by seeing through each and every one of you, individually and collectively, how you have interpreted your particular facet of the multidimensional crystal of infinite creation. We always interact with every civilization knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are in every way, shape, and form equal to any civilization we are aware of. No matter whether or not you may have labels or terminologies for other civilizations that you may call more advanced than your own civilization, these things are not only just a matter of labeling, they are only a matter of perspective in that way. There may be an opportunity to realize that your civilization is changing, is expanding, perhaps even similarly to the ways our civilization has expanded, but in no way, shape, or form are our methodologies being presented to you to allow you to think that our methodologies are better than the ways you might choose. We are simply here interacting with your civilization at this time because we have recognized that your civilization is exploring things and ideas and levels of consciousness that we have explored, that have worked for us. And as you create that exploration in your consciousness, you radiate a particular frequency that we have in your terms picked up upon, and we accept as an invitation, in a sense, to interact with you in this way now, to reflect to you some of the ways these ideas you are exploring have worked for us, so that if you wish to, you can adapt and adopt some of the ideas we have used into your own reality if you find they work for you. The reason we are doing this is because we love you unconditionally and experience a great deal of joy at seeing your own creative expressiveness come to the fullest possible blossoming that it can. And we, again, always receive benefit out of these interactions because by interacting with you, we get to experience more ways that the infinite has of creating itself to be, and this expands our understanding of creation as well, which allows us to know there is always more and more and more to explore. We would enjoy exploring these ideas with you as equals. But do understand, we are in many ways beings like yourselves. We do not know everything. We know everything we need to know to be who we are. You know everything you need to know to be who you are being at any given moment. And individually and together we can discover more. But do understand that the fundamental, as you say, purpose to these interactions is to remind you, each and every one of you, that you have the power to function as a reflection of the infinite and to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that all the answers you seek are attainable through the gate and the doorway that is your own individual consciousness. Is all of this making sense in your language so far? Is it translating adequately? The idea, therefore, is to perhaps keep in mind within all of these interactions that from time to time there may be concepts in our society that do not, let us say, translate in your language adequately. There may be concepts in your society that do not translate into our society in exactly the same way. And therefore, let us, in your terminology, be aware of semantic differences in all of the things we will discuss. Very often it has been our experience that where there seems to be, in any discussion, a great deal of difference, there really is no difference at all in the fundamental point of view, but only a difference in the way you go about defining it. And if we can trust that we basically, all of us, are coming from the same source of infinite creation, then on some level you all have to know, and we all have to know, that ultimately we are all saying the same thing. So the idea now will be to engage in expansion of awareness and exploration together. And we extend to you our deepest appreciation at allowing us to experience the gift of your consciousness. And in return for this gift, I will ask you now, how may I serve you?
You mentioned infinite creation.
Hey.
I would like to know, created by what, and what do you refer to as infinite creation?
Infinite creation perhaps may translate more colloquially into your language as what you typify by the word God. We use the phrase, all that is, and mean it literally in that way. Our view of what you would call the infinite creator, the one prime source of all creation, is to us simply everything that exists. In other words, all that is literally all that is, made up of all that you experience in any dimension of reality. Now, it, to our perception, is aware of itself as a singular identity, but it is also aware of itself as a collection of all the diversity within creation as well. It sees itself through the polarity of being one and being many. So to us, when we refer to the idea of infinite creation, we are basically making a reference to something similar to the concept in your planet that you would call God, although perhaps our definitions may differ a little bit.
I understand.
Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Sitting.
Is it afterlife, and if so, what is it like?
Oh, it's very active, thank you. The idea, first of all, of what you call afterlife is not afterlife at all. It is simply a continuation of life, but we know what you mean by the terminology. The idea simply is that you have created there to be a multiplicity of levels of non-physical experience as well as a multiplicity of levels of physical experience as well. Now, the idea is that when you, let us say, translate from a physical to a non-physical consciousness modality, you are then, in a sense, a thought form in a world of thought form energy. The one main difference at first that will generally be noticed by many of you is that there will be no longer any time lag between what you think and what you experience as seemingly real. Because you are now one-to-one of thought form in thought form energy. The idea, the definition of what you call physical reality contains the notions of space and time in linear fashions and makes it seem as if there is a time lag between the thoughts you have and the reality you experience. You understand that all of this idea that we are explaining now is founded on the principle that each and every individual is actually responsible for the creation of their own experiential reality. Thus, you are creating your reality physically, but there is a gap between your imagining of it and your bringing it into physical manifestation in physical terms. In non-physical terms, there is no waiting. The second you conceive of it, that's what you see. So, you can put it this way. Usually, the first thing an individual will experience, having been translated, or what you would call dying, from physical to non-physical reality, will be an atmosphere, an environment, a scenario that is most representative of the strongest belief systems they had just before they died. In other words, what they were most likely thinking they would see when they died is probably the first thing they will see. Because you are the projectors of reality in that sense. Now, as soon as an individual begins to, as you say, get a handle on the idea that their thoughts change and all of a sudden the scenarios around them start changing, they'll begin to recognize that all scenarios, all atmospheres, all projections are representative of the afterlife. And it can be basically almost anything you want it to be. Now, there are levels of energy in the afterlife, each one being less and less and less physicalized in its terminology, more, as you would say, rarefied in its concepts. And so less and less likely it becomes, as you, let us say, graduate up the scale, that you will project your reality in any physically symbolized terms, but you will still experience it as being a real, solid reality. Do you understand this? If we may, let us say, inject this into the conversation for a moment. In our dialogues with many of you, we have perceived that the majority, or at least a wide group of your society, has a particular notion about the idea of being able to communicate with individuals who have died. It is altogether possible. However, many of you have created the assumption that when an individual dies, they have nothing better to do than hang around waiting for you to contact them. They are very busy. They must acclimate to their new surroundings. They have assistants, what you would call guides, that are, in that sense, acclimating them to their new surroundings, filling them in, as you say, on exactly what you can do and how you can do it. They still have lives to live. They still have interests and ideas they wish to pursue. It is simply now they are pursuing them in different ways. So it is not really an afterlife, but an expansion of life, a continuation of life. It is simply a different level, a different expression, a different perspective of life. And in all reality, it is really no different than you, in physical terms, going from one room in a building to another room in a building that may simply have more windows in it and allow you to see a little bit farther. Now, is this a sufficient description, or is there something specific you wish to discuss? Yes, thank you very much. Killing.
Why is it that we as humans tend to make things so much more complicated and more painful than usual?
A question we have been asking for quite some time. The idea, you simply see, is that many thousands of your years ago, your human culture began a cycle of limitation that brought with it something that you would call an unexpected effect. This unexpected effect was the ability, once you had locked yourselves into materiality from a certain point of view, an ability to forget that you did it to begin with and that you could extract yourself from it anytime you chose. It is under the category of what in your language you call a catch-22. The idea simply is that a certain degree of experience of limitation, a certain focus of limitation, automatically brings with it an ability to forget that you created it to begin with. So, once you had locked yourself into that cycle of limitation and focus as a physical being, you then had to play out the natural result of the momentum you generated many thousands of years ago. Now you are at the ending of that cycle, and that's why many of you are now remembering that there is more to your consciousness en masse than you previously thought. Oh, here and there, individuals in your society were able to, let us say, break out of the cycle. But now, en masse, you are finding an explosion of examinations, of exploration, of consciousness. That is why we are even able to have this conversation this day of your time. Because you're at the end of the old cycle of forgetting and the beginning of the new cycle of remembering exactly who and what you are, aspects of the infinite. And that you created the cycle of limitation to begin with, and that it was always under your control to break free of it. But you had forgotten that that was so. So in placing yourself within the idea of limitation, you created, let us say, an entire mythology of now how reality should be manifest. It now became obvious that things had to be done in what you would call complicated manners, requiring many detailed steps for the accomplishment of anything. And because, in a sense, you had lost your sight of exactly how easy it was to create your reality, you began to create all sorts of methodologies by what you would call trial and error that seemed to be able to bring you somewhere close back to the surface, but which required many various ritualistic steps in that sense, so that you would constantly be able to monitor yourself, your progress, your procedure as you went, so that you would not, in your terminology, accidentally slip back into the forgetting state. And so now, at the end of the cycle, you have come up with many different systems of approach, each of which carries its own degree of complexity. What you are now, therefore, discovering is that one of the greatest difficulties your society has in what you call your new age of awareness is in really believing that something can be worthwhile if it's simple. The idea is very simple. The creation of your reality is very simple. You are, as you say, made in the image of God. Now, what does this mean? If God, all that is a multi-dimensional creator, then you must be too, because you are made in the image of God. That's what it means, at least to us, that's what it means. Every being within creation is literally an aspect of the infinite, and is always completely responsible for the creation of its immediate experiential reality, because you are a co-creator with the Creator. So now you are remembering that, and now you are, let us say, weaning yourself of the rituals, of the complexities. You are working your way through at whatever pace is comfortable for each of you individually and collectively, to a point where you can realize that things can be very simple, very easy, and that you do not have to endure struggling and suffering in order to discover that you deserve to not struggle and suffer anymore. Understand? Is this a sufficient description of the idea?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Sitting.
Channel of communication that is now established a recent thing, or has there been attempts in the past, for example, through our so-called prophets?
Oh, yes, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of your years of counting. Understand, there was very blatant interaction with many levels of consciousness in what you call some of the past cultures upon your planet. It is simply that the idea of forgetting that is actually the most recent thing that has happened in your history. The idea of breaking the link consciously is the most recent thing. So the idea of the communications that are going on now actually preceded the break and are now taking up once again on a widespread basis. Now and then, through the cycle of forgetfulness, there were many attempts to reestablish communication. But because of the depth to which your society had taken its forgetfulness, much of this proved to be, in your terms, difficult. But now these communications are being reestablished because your own consciousness is reawakening to the possibility that there are other levels. You are remembering, in that sense, that you are more than what you simply appear to be as a physical being. And so you are stretching out, reaching out, once again, for those levels of consciousness, both within yourself and within other dimensions of experience. And as you do so, that to us is the invitation that you are ready to re-engage in dialogue once again, which makes us very happy. Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Well, I'd like to add a little bit more to that.
All right.
And ask you if you have any idea of what has stimulated this new awareness on our part to make this communication.
You have played out the cycle of negativity. There is almost nothing left for you to experience in that cycle. You have arrived at the end of it. Now, let me share with you a little, as you say, nickname that many of us have for your planet. In no way, shape, or form is this name meant to be derogatory. Honest. But the idea is that we have called you the masters of limitation. And what this basically means is that in our experiences with other civilizations, there are many civilizations going through their own transformations, by no means are you, in your terminology, let us say, at the bottom of your totem pole at all. However, you are, as far as our experience tells us, one of the most highly focused and accelerated civilizations we have ever encountered. Which means you have experienced a greater degree of limitation in a more rapid way than almost any other civilization we have come across. You have, in other words, done it all. There is almost no other way you could explore the idea of the limitations you began several thousands of years ago. You have played it all very quickly, all the way out. You have basically satisfied yourself. You have now, in a sense, expended the cycle. And now that is why, simply because there are no other limitations to perform, that you are now waking up out of that dream into another one. Because there is simply nothing else left to do. It has to be, as we would have done in your society for thousands of years, that we knew we would have to wait until you had played the idea out. And now you have played it out. This life is the life that is representative of the transformational age. Has been going on now in an accelerated fashion on your planet for approximately 40 to 50 of your years, will continue in an accelerated fashion for approximately 40 to 50 years more. You are, as you say, smack in the middle of the transformational age, the halfway point. But it will be a very accelerated state, because the sooner you open up into positive ideas, you begin to accelerate geometrically. It will not take very long for your world to transform into a unified state, because the idea in and of itself of the exploration of limitation means things are broken down in complex ways. Things create a lot of complexity and detail, and you have to experience things a step at a time, one after the other. But now as you begin to unify things back together and awaken into your integrity, your integral state, things can speed up and can be very accelerated. You can experience a complete transformation within what you call no longer than the 100-year span we have already described, and that acceleration in a positive direction will take you to a place of establishing a unification, whereas it requires tens of thousands of years to explore all the ramifications of the idea of limitation and negativity. Simply, you are at the end of the cycle. That is why it is happening now. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, can I ask one more thing?
Absolutely. You don't have to ask if you can ask.
With this acceleration and awareness, will it possibly mean that more of us or all of us will be able to communicate with you?
Yes. But the idea first is that your own planet, shall I say, is more important. The sooner you begin to establish equal communications with each other and begin to function as one world, then it will be a very simple thing for you as one world to establish very blatant communications with other whole worlds. But the first step is to equalize this communication between yourselves. Then anything is possible. Everything is possible. And in fact, a lot of things become highly probable. Does that satisfy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You said something about God before, and I'm curious if you and your people are familiar with Christianity.
To some degree.
And what do you think about the idea that Jesus Christ is a pagan?
We perceive that the idea has been to some degree misunderstood. In the usual vernacular of your word Savior, this is not in our perception what the individual you call the Christ actually meant to call himself. The idea simply, from our point of view, if we may begin at what you call the beginning, is that what you call the Christ consciousness is the collective, the combined consciousness, the positive side, the combined consciousness of your entire civilization. Once again, aware of itself as a singular consciousness, but also aware of itself as the combination of all of your collective consciousnesses. The idea of the manifestation in physical terms of what you call the Christ actually happens far more often than once. And the idea simply is that in every endeavor, in every projection of the Christ as a physical expression, the idea that was being shared with your population was that you are also all part of the Christ. Not that in that sense, the idea of the Christ is your Savior in the sense that you have no power to create the reality you desire, and that only it does, but simply that your power to create that reality is a part of what it is. The idea simply is that at the time that the information was delivered in your society, the concepts that were understood by your civilization then could only translate the idea in terms of being a ruler and being ruled. And so you created the idea that the Christ was a savior, in a sense that would do everything for you, rather than understanding that all the Christ is a reflection to each and every one of you that you are aspects of the Christ and have an absolute right to create the elevation and ascension of your own energy as a representation of that energy. Now, each and every world, each and every civilization has its own version of what you call the Christ consciousness. In our ancient remnant language, which we no longer use, the combined consciousness of our entire world was called Shekinah. Our Shekinah, your Christ consciousness, and the combined consciousness of all other worlds together will form what you call the infinite creation. So in a sense you could say the Christ consciousness is a, shall I say, miniature version of all that is. And in that sense, that's why your society has translated it out to Son of God. Because it is in a sense a miniature version of the infinite.
Do you think that's why maybe we are so limited? Because we put everything in, well, for Christianity puts trust in Jesus Christ and not in themselves.
The idea simply is that any time you take the power that you are and remove it from yourself, you place a limitation that actually denies your very existence, what you have been created to be. So yes, in that sense, the definitions are what is responsible for creating the limitation. Now the idea to some degree of what has been described as many of the attributes and experiences are all valid. It is all valid. Any tool in that sense is a valid tool. It gets you where you want to go. But the idea is that your society, as we perceive it, and again, not meant derogatorily, has placed many labels, many definitions, which in and of themselves are really the only thing responsible for limiting your ability to see that you are all the Christ. And that is what it is all about. By the way, one of the manifestations, the physical manifestations of the direct Christ consciousness that many of you have not recognized is what you call also your being called Mary, your mother of Jesus, as the female polarity of the Christ. There is always male and female in the collective Christ consciousness. And from our perspective, what this basically means, in relating it to what you now call your new age or your transformational age, is that the so-called second coming is not any longer the manifestation of the Christ consciousness in a single embodiment. It is the awakening of the Christ consciousness in all of you, so that you are literally creating heaven on earth. That is our perception of the so-called second coming. Is this making sense in your language?
Yes.
Does that answer the question sufficiently for you?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, what do you think of consciousness expanding drugs that we discovered in our exploration here?
Again, the idea is that all tools are valid. However, recognize that we have observed in your society that one of the, shall I say, choices, you would call it tendencies, but I will call it choices, that your society makes, is that because they have not been taught that they are already in touch with their aspect of the infinite and that the power is from within them, and they don't believe they are in control of their lives, they will continue to put the idea of the power into the external tool that they discover, assuming that the tool has the power to alter the state of consciousness in the way they want to alter it. It is all well and good to use it as a trigger, in that sense, as a catalyst, to show you what realms, what dimensions you can expand into. But do understand, once you have been shown, you don't need the tool anymore. You can do it yourself anytime you want to. The idea of what you call addiction is simply the continuation of the assumption that the power is still in the tool, in the drug, and that you don't have the power, that the drug has the power, and that you need the drug in order to create the effect. Once the drug has shown you the effect, you can create it any time because you created it to begin with, because the drug is only a projection of your consciousness anyway. Is this making some sense? Yes. So the idea, fundamentally, is that all tools are basically valid if you understand that you are approaching the idea with your best sense of integrity and that you are honestly exploring for what you believe to be a beneficial idea in that sense. Then recognize that almost anything can be used in that way and will allow you to key into, to walk into ideas that will help you expand your consciousness. However, always be mindful of the fine line between believing you need it and understanding that it is simply showing you a door that you can now open anytime you wish if you simply change the definition of where the power lies. Understand? Yes. Does this assist you? Oh, thank you very much.
You spoke of our collective subconscious or our collective consciousness. We have certain symbols as humans that are very universal in our dreams and in our meditations. For instance, a snake shows up as a powerful symbol for humans the world over.
Yes, although there will be some slightly different meanings from culture to culture, but yes, it is what you call a foundational archetypal symbol.
Do we have any universal archetypes, for instance, from our collective subconscious into your collective subconscious and back and forth?
Well, thank you very much. The idea, first of all, beginning with life itself, will be universal to all in some form. because light is what everything is made of. It is the creational fabric, as it were. So manifestations, ideas that are symbols of light itself, what you may call the stars, your sun being such a one, or any manifestation of light itself in that sense, will more or less be universal. Even in civilizations that do not perceive with the same sensory organs of sight that you do, they will still manifest the idea of light in some format, because they will perceive it as the vibration of the fundamental idea of the fabric of existence itself. That will translate everywhere. Symbols, however, in your terms are tricky things, and again will usually be relevant to a particular culture. We may have similar ideas, similar concepts, but for you may use one symbol, and for us, we may use another. The idea, to some degree, is that geometric shapes will be somewhat universal. Now, the idea of the circle in and of itself is actually the foundational geometric shape behind what you call the snake. Understand? Yes. The serpent, as you have said, overboard that which consumes its tail, that which represents the cycle of infinity, and in fact, in your society, the serpent, the idea of the snake, is actually a very ancient symbol tied in with what you call the dragon symbol, and it stands for ancient knowledge or ancient wisdom. One polarity of it for benefit, and one polarity of it knowledge misused in a negative way. And also, by the way, that dragon symbol, the serpent symbol, the snake symbol, actually ties directly in to many connections that all of you have that actually are extraterrestrial in origin. In other words, none of you are original to your planet. None of you. And the snake symbolizes one particular influx of energy at a particular point in your history of reincarnations that were representative of an influx from other stellar systems. The symbol typified the idea of the energy at that time. A great deal of it at that time was actually experienced as negative and had a lot to do with some of the complexities that were formed in your society at that time. Is this making some sense to you?
Yes. Could you speak more on us not being original to the planet or whatever?
Oh, yes, we can, but we will not do so too much. Okay. Because the idea is that it is our strongest desire that you focus on the idea that obviously you chose to be born on your planet for a reason, and you wish your focus to remain in the service that you can provide on that planet. It is quite valid to understand the idea of your lineage in that sense and your extraterrestrial connection, but do understand, from my point of view, you are an alien to me. So the idea is that what you are is valid where you are, and everything you need to live the life to the fullest that you need to live is right with you now. Anything you need from anywhere else will crop up in whatever manner you need it that will serve you and help you be who you are right now. Our best suggestion is, in your meditative state, go exploring with your imagination and see what feelings come up within you that are strongest in terms of an association or a connection to what you might call an extraterrestrial idea. But do understand, we have heard talk in what you call your metaphysical age of people being from this star system and originating in that star system. You all come from everywhere and nowhere. And the idea, when a reference is made of someone having an origin in a particular star system, simply means that that particular connection is for some reason, due to the definition of what this life is, standing out more abruptly than almost any other connection. In another life, you could be perceived to have a completely different connection to a completely different star system, if any connection at all. So exploring with your imagination, but always remember, of paramount importance is to apply the idea to what you are doing on your planet now. Because even though you have connections to everywhere else, right now you are focused as a native of your world, and therefore that must be the most important focus. Otherwise you'd be somewhere else. Understand?
Understand.
Just the decision.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
If we are responsible for our own reality, and our reality is some kind of pain, does it end with death, and does your society experience death as we do?
Not similarly. We do, as you say, translate from physiological to non-physiological formats, but we do it, as you would say, with our eyes open, consciously, and simply translate our physical form back into energy and continue on in a more expanded way. No, the idea of the generation of pain in no way, shape, or form means it must culminate in what you call physical death. It can always be transformed, especially now in your transformation life, where you are beginning to be aware of the fact that pain does not have to remain. So the idea is that in our civilization we no longer experience the idea of pain. Now the ideas of pain, all pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, emotional pain, physical pain, all forms of what you call pain are, from our perspective, the result of resistance of your natural self. Pain is friction, to put it on a simple terminology. Resisting the natural flow of yourself as an aspect of the infinite. And usually this resistance occurs when, having been brought up in the society you have been brought up in, you have been fed and bought into definitions of limitation. So that in trying to live out these definitions that are not necessarily representative of who you really are, you are going against your grain, so to speak. And going against the grain gives you splinters. So the idea of going against the grain will stab at you and create the idea of pain. In fact, pain is one of the ways that can function as a barometer to let you know when you are attempting to swim upstream. It can be used in a positive manner in that way. The idea goes hand in hand with the concept that we have discussed with your society many times as follows. Excitement. 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 What is excitement? Do any of you really have a definition of what excitement actually is, mechanically speaking? The idea as we perceive it is as follows, if we may share our point of view. Excitement. What you call the physical sensation or the knowledge, the knowingness of yourself, that is translated as excitement, is your physical translation of the vibratory energy that represents the path you chose to be at that moment of your life. So when something excites you more than anything else, that excitement is there to tell you three things. First, this is who and what you are. The circumstance and the situation that comes into your life at any given moment that excites you more than any other is letting you know this is who you are. Act on it. You see, excitement is the sign that many of you ask for. What can I do in life? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my mission? Give me a sign. Hey, look over here. It's a very exciting thing you could be doing. Don't bother me now. I'm looking for my purpose. I'm too busy searching for my mission in order to have a good time. Hey, look over here. What about this exciting thing? Not now. I am looking for my mission in life. But you see, the things that come with excitement are the answers, are the signals, are the signposts. That's what excitement is. It's tapping you squarely on the shoulder saying, this is what you want to be doing right now. The reason it excites you is because it is aligned with the idea of who you are. That's what excitement is. The second thing it tells you is because it is who you are, it will be the thing, if you act on it, with trust and conviction, it will be the thing that can be the most effortless thing you will ever do. Because it is who you are. You are really being yourself. And so, of course, it will be effortless. The only time you have struggle is when you're trying to be someone you're not. Again, fighting the flow. Buying into the definitions of what other individuals say you ought to be. The third thing it tells you when a situation comes along that is more exciting than the other is, this is the thing that if you do it, will support you in the most abundant way to allow you to keep doing it in a more expanded, ever spiraling, expanding way. 1. Excitement tells you it is you. 2. It tells you that because it is you, it will be an effortless creation. 3, it tells you that because it is you and will be an effortless creation, you will be able to attract the abundance you need in whatever form you need. And understand abundance is just more than money. What you call in your planet money is one of the valid ways to represent abundance, but it is not the only way. There are many ways. So let us add one more definition. Abundance. The ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. Period. That's all abundance is. Two individuals, one in your terms with more money, one in your terms with less money. If they are both capable of doing what they need to do when they need to do it, they are equally abundant. Because that's all that matters to them. And that's the level they have defined themselves to be. If someone has a more expanded idea of what it is that excites them, then perhaps they need more symbols of abundance to flow into their life to represent what it is they are. If someone simply has an idea that is sufficient to the symbols of abundance that are already in his or her life, then they will still be able to accomplish it as smoothly, as effortlessly, and easily as anyone else. So the idea, fundamentally, is that anytime you feel pain, you are basically ignoring, either because you have been taught to ignore, or because you do not believe that you can deserve the ease of creation, but you are basically ignoring the thing that really excites you the most. And when we say the thing that excites you the most, we do not mean you have to have, at this particular moment, an idea of the thing that will be the most exciting thing you will ever do in your life. No. Take it a step at a time. At any given moment, whatever it is at that moment, if you honestly accept all the things you are capable of doing, whatever it is at that moment that is the most exciting thing you could be doing, that you have the capability of doing something about, do it. It will align you with all of the flow of creation, and life will be effortless. This is actually what is meant in your society by the term surrendering. You aren't actually giving up your power, you're actually flowing in complete accord with your power. But because it seems effortless, and because your world is used to thinking in terms of things being under your control if they require an effort, then you don't think they're in control when there is no effort. And so you create this idea that you are giving your power up to a greater force. In a sense, yes, but not really. You're actually taking your power, owning your responsibility when your life is effortless. That means you are going with the flow of who you have created yourself to be, specifically, and what you were created to be, generally, an aspect of the infinite. Is this making some sense to you?
A great deal.
So you can always transform pain by finding out within yourself, what is the definition I have bought into that would create the pain to begin with? What must I believe in order to have this pain reaction? When you get in touch with what the definition is, rewrite it. And then act like you believe the new definition is now more true than the old one. And as soon as you do, your life will be representative of the new definition. Because your physical reality is always the product of what you hold to be the strongest truth, the strongest belief, the strongest definition. That's why there really isn't any the truth. There are a few fundamentals that could be called the basics of existence that are common for everyone, but there aren't very many of them. All the specifics are your creation, and the ones that seem similar from one person to another are similar only because you telepathically agree to create them to be similar, so you can all play the same game. But there is no real the truth in specific terms against which to measure other truths for their validity. The truth is composed of all truths, and all truths are actually real. Any definition you have at any given moment generates a self-perpetuating, self-sustaining, self-fulfilling, automatic system of manifestation to support the definition and make it seem as if for that moment it is the only true thing. Because every reality is real. Every perception is a reality. Your imagination is the gate, the library to all probable realities. You cannot imagine non-existence. Whatever you imagine is on some level, somewhere, somehow, somewhen, real. And there are various ones that can be manifest in your particular dimension. Yes, there may be some that are not immediately applicable in your dimension, but they are nonetheless real. So the idea is to get a handle on what are the definitions that have created your experience. And if you find that there are definitions you prefer, maintain them. If you find there are definitions you don't prefer, change them. That's what you have free will for. Does this help you?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Hurry. Yes.
What is the purpose of knowing what your connection is to another planetary system? And looking for...
You exist on every level there is to exist upon right now. Different lives, what you call reincarnation, is simply your term in linear time references. But the idea of linear time is your perception from within a physical reality. All the lives, all the existences, all the ways you do exist, all exist now. And in a sense, on one meaning of the term, they all exist here as well. The analogy we have used a few times is what you call your radio analogy. You have in your society the analogy, the device you call a radio. Now you know that when your dial is tuned to one particular program, you know that all the other programs are still there at the same time. But you only get the one you're listening to, you're focused on at any given moment. Let's call that this life now. Here's your dial now, tuned into the program of what you call your Earth existence. But for each and every one of those other existences, their dial on the setting they have it on seems to be the only life that is going on. And all the other ones are immaterial or ghost-like or probable or potential lives or past or future or alternate lives. Each life sees itself as the life being lived. But all these things are going on simultaneously because all of existence exists now. And all the separations in existence are simply different frequencies that existence has of experiencing itself now. And it experiences all these different ideas all at once. However, because the definition of your particular program involves linear time, then you don't experience it all at once. You experience it stretched out. Before, now, after, beginning, middle, end, cause, effect, negative, positive. All these ideas are simply the result of the definition you collectively have created your physical reality to be. So, the importance of any of these connections simply is that there will always be bleed-through, shall we say, from all of your alternate lives into this one and vice versa. And that bleed-through will usually come in a way that is symbolized or formalized in a way you can apply it into this life. Otherwise, it wouldn't make too much sense for you. So, being aware of some of the other connections can assist you. All we do is de-stress the idea that it is crucial to know all those other connections because every life is a complete kit and has all it needs to live the life being lived. If it excites you to explore these connections, it can awaken certain insights within you about perhaps the reasons for why you chose to be born on Earth at this time. A lot of those other connections do tie in, especially now in your transformational age, to why you have chosen to have a life on Earth at this time, especially because a lot of the things you will be doing on Earth at this time will actually open you up to blatant interactions with many of us, wherein many of you will discover your own counterparts existing in our society. Understand? That's why it has, to some degree, some relevance in your life now. But we always like to downplay it, because the power always starts and ends with you. Understand?
Yes.
So the idea simply, in terms of a different connection to any different life, will be that each life of its own different definition will then make different levels of connection that are relevant to the definition of that life. There may be several lives that may have what you would call the same connection, thereby creating what appears to be a continuity of connection through a period of time. But each life chooses to make that connection separately and distinctly. And any continuity you may perceive is only your illusion. Understand? Is this of assistance? Well, thank you very much. Turning.
You said that you observed our culture over thousands of years.
I was speaking collectively, not my society specifically, but many of the societies within the association of worlds have, yes.
Living the life that you're living now, do you experience time in the same linear dimension that we experience?
Somewhat, but not exactly. Our ability to communicate with you right now, in a sense, shows that we experience it somewhat differently. For colloquially speaking, we are actually of your future. And in a sense, therefore, you could say we are speaking backwards in time. But the idea is that we do perceive to some degree, because we still have a physicality, somewhat, some notions of time, but they are very pliable and malleable for us, because our society's transformation is now going completely from physicality to non-physicality. Understand?
Yes, so from your viewpoint, you can tell what the transformational age has accomplished.
To some degree, here and there. Not everything will be apparent to us, and each and every different time that we, as you say, tap into the flow, we may perceive very different things. But some general overall patterns and flows are observable to us because of our vantage point. Does this answer the question?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Chilling.
How do you perceive the definition of love to be from your perception?
Oh, thank you.
How can one thus learn to love unconditionally? I'm guessing that you, in your society, you may have not loved unconditionally because you use the word unconditionally specifically.
Yes, in the past, we had many similar ideas to what your society is going through, not entirely focused, but there was a time of conditionality in the idea of our love, and now in that sense it is unconditional. The idea of unconditional love is simply that, once again, love is life. Life is love. Love is the prime chord, the prime frequency of creation itself. In a sense, you can literally say, everything is made of love, of life. It is the same thing. It is the substantive, supportive medium of existence itself. It is the very fabric of God. That is what love is. That's why when you're aligned with it, you are pulsing in synchronous harmony with the prime fundamental oneness of existence. That's what that vibration is. Complete and utter unity, alignment, synchronicity, harmony. The idea simply is that to allow yourself more opportunity to experience love unconditionally, start allowing yourself to perceive the infinite trust, the infinite conviction that you have always used to create your reality, whether it has been positive or negative. Remember that when we talk about using trust, using unconditional love, and using conviction in its total form, we are not talking about things you have never done. We are not talking about things you have to learn to do. All of you have always expressed infinite trust, ultimate conviction in the creation of your reality. It's simply a matter of whether you trust more in the positive or the negative side. So the idea of having a completely positive life in manifestation is simply your choice to buy into the positive definition or the negative definition. It's up to you. Unconditional love can come when you understand that if you have the choice, the conscious choice to choose only the positive definitions and therefore only experience the positive manifestations, then what would, in your reality, be worthy of placing conditions upon it? What would you want to place conditions upon? What would you want to control in an externalized fashion? What would you not trust as being a part of the unfoldment of your life? The idea goes hand in hand, linked with the idea of ultimate trust in a positive sense. If you know that everything that's happening in your life is serving a positive reason and that you will learn from it in a positive way, then why not be unconditional about it? Why place conditions on it? The only reason anyone would place a condition on something is if you didn't trust that it belonged in your life. But there are no extraneous creations, and there really are no interruptions. If something is happening in your life, then it's happening for a reason, even if only to show you that it's something that you don't want to have happen again. Even if only to show you that you may have beliefs that spawned it to begin with, and you may not want to perpetuate those beliefs any further. That can be used in a positive way. Your reality can be saying, look, here's the pain, here's the result of what you have been taught. Do you like it? No? Yes? All right, you decide. And then we'll change. So be unconditional in that sense of knowing that you can learn from everything in a positive way. And if you do choose to know you are a positively oriented person, then even if another individual with negative intention seeks to interact with you, by being a positive filtration system, no matter what their action, will only experience a positive result of their action. So, you can afford to be unconditionally loving to even individuals who have chosen to operate outside of integrity. Because the only reason individuals choose to operate outside of integrity is because they have not been taught that they are in control of their lives, and they are scared to death. Because they do not feel that they are in control, they feel they are out of control. They feel themselves sinking. And what an individual does when they feel that is they try to take as many people with them as they can because they don't want to be alone. So the idea is that the more willing you are to express unconditional love to everyone, then the easier it is for you to shine as a living example of absolute positive life. That will at least give them the best opportunity, by seeing that living example reflected from you, to choose to match your vibration and become positive examples themselves. Not that they have to, because everyone has free will. But simply if you radiate at that frequency, then no matter what they choose, it will only leave you with a positive effect. If they choose to match your frequency, then there will be more positive energy within your surroundings. If they choose to not match your frequency, they will not be able to stand in its light, and they will go on their way. And you will still be left with a positive atmosphere. Understand?
I sure do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Remember this as a prime fundamental. No situation, no circumstance has built-in meaning. All situations, all circumstances are fundamentally neutral, empty, blank, devoid of meaning, zero. Or as you say, zip. The idea simply is that every circumstance that appears in physical terms is simply a surface image, an empty shell, a prop. You fill the prop with meaning based upon what you have been taught to believe the situation means in being brought up in your society. When your parents said, if you see this, it means that. Steer clear. Now, obviously, on a fundamental level, there are things that are generally beneficial in terms of buying into the idea of something that, if you do it, may shorten your lifespan. But the idea, in specific terms, is nowhere near as limiting as many of you think. The idea simply is to remember that it is a very physical and mechanical principle. You have a neutral situation. You have two choices of type of meaning to apply to that neutral situation, positive or negative. Whatever meaning you apply is the effect you will get out of the situation. If you apply a positive meaning, you'll get a positive effect. If you apply a negative meaning, you'll get a negative effect. It's simple physics, simple mechanics. That's all it is. It is simply that a lot of your definitions have been so strongly ingrained in many of you that you think the situation is coming with an automatic meaning because you apply the meaning so quickly on what you call an unconscious level that you don't even realize you're doing it. You don't even realize that the situation in and of itself doesn't have any meaning to begin with. An example, an analogy that we have used a few times is called the train station analogy. Let us say, with all the integrity you can muster, with all the openness and honesty, you know you are doing your absolute best to meet a train on time, to take that train to what you believe is a very important meaning that will change the course of your life. So off you go to your train station. You arrive on your platform, you look down the track, and there goes the train. Bye-bye. You have missed your train. Now, negative choice. Negative choice. Oh no! This is horrible! Terrible! Unthinkable! I have missed my train. I will now miss my meaning. My life is ruined. Well, now you have a couple of choices in negativity. You can keep it to yourself and be miserable, or you can share your misery with all sorts of other people, making their day just as miserable as you have created yours to. So let us say you choose the latter, and you become very angry about the idea of having missed the train. This is wrong, this is bad, this is terrible. I am now going to go off and complain to the train station about their schedule. It's their fault, not mine, not mine. And so off you go, in an absolute furor, as you say. Let's back the scenario up. Now you arrive at the train station all over again. You arrive on the platform. There goes the train. Now, this is the neutral situation. You are on the platform. The train is moving down the track. You are not on it. That's it. This situation doesn't mean anything. You are standing on a platform. A train is moving down the track away from you. You're not on the train. That's it. Now, let's say, instead of putting a negative meaning into this neutral circumstance, you put a positive meaning into it. You say, I know I did all I could to catch that train, and yet I still missed it. Therefore, there must be a positive reason. I don't know what it is. My analytical mind may not be immediately capable of fathoming why, but I know there must be a positive reason. Why? Because I chose to know I am a positively oriented person. Therefore, everything that happens in my life must only have a positive result. How about that? Therefore, instead of getting angry and stomping off to go and complain, you stand there perhaps for a little while. You ponder, ponder, ponder. You know you're going to miss the first meeting, but perhaps you explore it with fascination and curiosity. Why would this have happened? I wonder, I wonder. Oh joy, an unexpected challenge to discover. Well, you ponder long enough so that the next train comes along. Oh my, where's the time go? Next train is coming along, and you get on the next train. Well, I don't know why. Why should I get on the next train? I don't know. I've missed the meeting. Well, who knows? Well, maybe the meeting is starting late. I don't know. Well, I'll get on the train. And there in the train is a friend you haven't seen for perhaps 20 of your years. And all of a sudden it becomes clear this friend was on their way to see you to actually help you in a better way than the person you were going to see. Too good to be true? Oh, that's just a coincidence. That doesn't happen in real life. Oh, yes, it does. All the time. All the time. When you let it. There is negative synchronicity and positive synchronicity. Which one you get depends on your orientation. When you put positive meaning in, all you get is one positive coincidence after another. Notice I did not say accident. Coincidence after another. When you are negatively oriented, you miss the train all the time and do not understand why, and keep perpetuating the idea of being out of sync with everything, because you reinforce the idea that you don't fit, that the things in your life don't fit, they don't belong. This can't be happening to me. It can't be representative of my life. I have nothing to do with this. I am not responsible for creating this. The power is out of my hands. Life is happening to me. I'm a victim. Woe is me. All these attitudes reinforce and continue to perpetuate the negative side of events. Up to you. By the way, does this answer the question sufficiently? Yes. Thank you. Shirley.
I have a question.
Oh, all right.
We have a terrible disease in this country now, AIDS.
Yes.
Incurable.
Oh, not really.
Would you comment on helping someone to die and suicide?
Oh, all right. First of all, recognize that one of the primary reasons that the dis-ease exists to begin with, and all dis-ease exists to begin with, once again, is a refusal to blend the polarities. In this particular case, with the dis-ease you have called age, it is directly connected to the idea of the refusal over a long period of time of your society to blend and balance the masculine and feminine principles within each and every being. It is a denial of self-intimacy in many ways. A denial of many different ideas that is now perpetuated, that has now forced your society to respond to this idea by dropping its barriers and in your terms being exposed by having no immunity to the idea now of having to face the issues it needs to face. Individuals can be cured. There are a few ways, although your society may not be ready to hear them. One of them is electromagnetically. With a strong enough electromagnetic field, pulsed at 7.5 cycles per second, the vibration of your planet Earth, an individual cellular structure can become aligned to the natural vibration of your planet and be rendered back into its natural state of health no matter what the disease. There are electrical means. There are even what you would call chemical means, although do understand that all of these physiological cures are only representative of a strong belief system that an individual can be cured. Because the belief system is always first, the belief system creates the disease, the belief system creates the cure. However, if an individual is choosing that idea, either from ignorance or knowledge or fear or joy, to create a disease and die, then there are many ways to assist an individual in allowing them to become through the transformation with eyes open, as you say, standing tall. First of all, it perhaps would be of benefit to remind them that they are in fact not ending, but only changing scenarios, to allow them to begin to get in touch with the fact that A, they created what they are going through with their power to begin with, and they are infinite, they are eternal, and they will always exist, even if they only exist in another form than what they are used to. Perhaps, of course, this will all be dependent upon whether this individual chooses to buy into this or not, because if they don't, then there may not be much you can do to assist them. Obviously, only what they are willing to allow you to help them with will be of help to them. You follow me? Yes. But the idea, simply, is that you can begin to paint a scenario of power and joy, of love, that all things in that sense physiological are transitory, that they are truly eternal beings, and get them to start feeling that expansiveness of their eternity. Because if you exist now, you always have and you always will. Existence does not become non-existence. This is also one of the mythologies of your planet. In a sense, and this may not be using your language correctly, but this may explain the principle nonetheless, non-existence is already full of all the things that will never exist. There's no room for anything that does exist to go into it. These are the polarities of creation: existence, non-existence, nothing, something. You have to have both nothing and something in order to have everything. If you have nothing and only nothing, something must exist. Something has to be created out of the nothingness in order to complete the concept of there being everything. So if you are already on the side of something, you never will go to the side of nothingness. So that which exists always has, always will. Even though it may change form. Even your own scientists know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So you can begin to ease the understanding of the individual, that they are eternal. Get them to feel that eternity. That's one way. Another way is to take them through a meditation we have called the, BLT. No, it does not stand for what you think it stands for. It stands for Blue Light Technique. And it goes something as follows. This can aid in the alignment and the ease of pain for any individual in your turn suffering from a disease, especially one that is going to translate them into non-physicality. Allow the individual in a calm and relaxed and meditative state to take 3 deep breaths, and with each and every breath, envision a red vibration of physicality. The second breath, a green vibration of mentality and naturehood. And the third breath, a blue energy of spirituality and electromagnetic light. Allow themselves to drift in their imagination and create in their visualization any place at all that would represent to them their place of perfect peace. Wherever or whenever that is, it doesn't matter. Whatever to them is the place of perfect rest, perfect peace. Let them revel in that for a moment. Floating, lying on the grass, floating in the water, floating in space, it does not matter where or when. Just absorbing, enjoying the scenario of their place of perfect peace. Then, suggest to them in their meditation that while they retain an image of the place of perfect peace, they start to envision that their body, as it is lying there, feeling either the warmth or the coolness or whatever sensation they desire, becomes surrounded by a transparent crystalline bubble of blue electromagnetic light, extending approximately 1 to 3 feet above the head, 1 to 3 feet below the feet, so that their body is floating in the middle of a bubble of crystalline light. If they are lying on the ground, then instruct that the bubble should go through the ground under their body, so they are encapsulated 360 degrees in all directions. Allow them to feel the energy of that bubble, and then allow them to perceive slowly that the bubble is not empty, but is filled with blue liquid light, and that it is touching their body, and that they are slowly, with every breath, breathing that liquid light in, filling up their entire body, breathing it out. All impurities dissolving, breathing the refreshing new blue liquid light in to every cell, feeling every cell invigorated and vitalized, and breathing out all the specks of black impurity and watching them dissolve. And as they go through this filtration process, continue to do so until all they are breathing in or out is the clear blue liquid light. Then begin to feel as if the blue liquid light is literally soaking into their cells, saturating through their pores until every single cell, every single molecule, every single atom, every single space is full of blue liquid light. And there's a vibration and an invigoration, an excitation, a buzzing of all the crackling energy. Then allow them to begin to see what they have for so long considered to be their body dissolving, fading, becoming one with the blue liquid, with the sphere, until they arrive at a point where the sphere is a homogeneous sphere with no one portion standing out more than any other portion, and the whole sphere is beating, beating, beating with every heartbeat as one, breathing, breathing, breathing with every breath as one. Let them feel that peace, that joy, that release for a moment. Then suggest that they perceive in the very center of the sphere a tiny, bright, white spark of light that is a reflection of crystal seed. And it grows and grows and grows and grows, becoming once again a bodily form made out of crystalline light, white, shining, crystalline light. One single crystal, transparent to the blue energy, clear and pure. And this is the reconstruction of their bodily form. And it is not the same body they had before. And it is a new body, a new thought projection of physical materiality. And they are a new creation. And allow them then to allow the bubble to expand and expand and expand and expand until it becomes the picture of their place of perfect peace. And allow them to open their eyes in their imagination as the new body and look around at the newly energized place of perfect peace, and allow them then with 3 deep breaths to lock that reality in and then open their physical eyes and understand beyond a shadow of a doubt that whether or not they have decided to remain physical or not, they now have created for themselves an energy vibration, a crystalline body form that will either allow itself to be healed and remain physical, or will take them through the translation into non-physicality with a minimum, if any, of pain. That's one way. You can use this if you wish, and trust your imagination and your unconditional love to come up with any other methodology that you feel within your heart will serve them best. Because you are interested in doing this, then by definition, obviously, you also must be able to come up with ways that will serve them, or you would not be attracted to ask such a question.
I'd like to know, why is it so hard for takes more energy for one to love as opposed to one that takes more energy to hate?
It doesn't.
Less energy to love, more energy.
It doesn't. It only seems to because of the definitions you have been brought up to believe. Because you think that hating is easier than loving. That's the only thing that makes it seem as if it is easier to hate than to love. It's only the definition. There is nothing inherent. There is nothing intrinsic about the energy of loving and the energy of hate that makes one truly more difficult than another. But if you have been fed over and over and over and over and over and over again the idea that struggle is more natural than not struggling, why would you be surprised that it's easier to hate than it is to love? All it is a definition. That's all it is. When you transform that definition, when you say, well, now wait a minute, it is my definition, it is my belief. Whether it comes from your experience or not doesn't make a difference. Your experiences are the products of your belief. And experiences only reinforce beliefs that created the experience to begin with. So when you get in touch with the idea that it is only your belief that makes it seem as if it is easier to hate than to love, you'll say, well, is this what I prefer to believe? Yes or no? No. What do I prefer to believe? I prefer to believe it is easier to love. Do I really believe that? Yes, I do. As soon as you do, it will be easier to love. It is only your definition that makes it seem so much more difficult. That's all it is. And do understand this. Hate may be a polarized expression of love, but it actually isn't the true opposite of love. Guilt is the true opposite of love. Because love is absolute worthiness. And you know what guilt is all about. Non-deservability. Hate still implies that something is deserved somewhere. So it may be a polarized expression, but it's not the true opposite. Does this make some sense to you?
Yeah.
Does that serve?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Sean, I asked you about astral projection.
Yes?
Can you give me a definition of it? And
Yes.
is it like death?
Yes, to some degree it is. Now, this may take the laying down of a little bit of groundwork. Bear with us if you will. All right?
All right.
Thank you. Understand the following fundamentals. I know this may seem to some degree to be extremely opposite to what a lot of you have been taught, but it isn't really contradictory. It's only, once again, a semantic or perceptual difference. Your spirit does not exist inside your body. Your consciousness does not exist inside your body. Your body is your spirit. In physical terminology, your body exists within your consciousness, not the other way around. But when you are focused as a physiological being, let's say for now that your consciousness is the analogy of a bubble, all right? Let us say that when you are focused as a physical being, your bubble is confined, as it were, to the specific locale of your physical expression. Let's just say for now, arbitrarily, within your head. die or when you project, what you are doing is this. Your consciousness, your focal point of consciousness, which is on the skin of the bubble, expands and becomes larger than your body, so that your body is now at the center of the bubble of your consciousness. And you can look down upon your body as if you rose from the body. And you can pop here and there and here and there, because you can, in a sense, open an eye of consciousness anywhere on the skin of the now more expanded bubble. And in your terminology, that seems to translate as traveling here and traveling there in the wink of an eye. It is because your consciousness has now expanded to include a broader perspective. You now include more reality than you did before. And at the very center of it is the most limited and confined level, what you call physical materiality. That's why it seems as if your spirit is rising from your body. In a sense it is, but it is more than it is a bubble of consciousness expanding outwardly and leaving your body at the center. Understand?
Yeah.
Is this making some sense to you?
Can you travel through any space and time?
Absolutely.
So it's completely limitless.
Absolutely, because space and time are your own definitions. In a sense, that's how our quote-unquote spacecraft travel as well. They are projected into what you may call astral material. And then they are simply redefined with a vibration that represents the space-time locale we wish them to be at. And they are reinserted into physical materiality at whatever locale is representative of that vibrational equation, having in a sense avoided the issue of travel altogether. Instantaneous teleportation. It is not really, quote-unquote, breaking the speed of light. It is not traveling within your dimension at all. Understand?
Yes, I do. I have one more question.
Oh, what?
Death, am I to assume that death is not being able to get back into your physical body?
Basically, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Shooting!
Yes, what is Scripture? What would be the definition of that? And what does it say, and the words you give to us, could that be utilized as Scripture?
What is your definition of Scripture first?
My personal definition of Scripture is any text that an individual utilizes in relation to his ultimate concern.
All right. I'll go along with that. It is methodology, it is perception, it is recognition of the self that allow the self to learn, to grow, to expand in that sense. If there is anything within this interaction you wish to apply in that way, by all means go ahead. But we are not here to assume that what we are sharing with you must be the only way that you can do this. It can be considered in that sense Scripture, although it is our preference that it simply be called information, since we perceive that the term Scripture in your society usually has a religious connotation, and all we are doing is talking. We are not creating the idea of a religion or a following. We are simply discussing ideas with equals and having a good time. So if you wish to call it Scripture, you may, but it's simply information that can be applied in beneficial ways for your positive growth and acceleration. So, will that work as a definition for you?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Honey!
Do you see us killing our planet?
Right now, yes, but not ultimately.
No? How do you see us changing it?
It is our perception at this moment that you are basically forcing yourself into a corner that will finally force you to face the idea that there are, in your terms, more beneficial and efficient ways to go about things. And that is our perception that within what you call the next 20 to 30 of your years as a society, in full recognition of that fact, you will then do so and transform your world very rapidly. Because once the recognition is made, then the changes can occur, historically speaking, almost overnight. So it is our perception of your energy now that within what you call the next 50 of your years at the outside, your society will be fully functioning as what you would call an equal member of the Association of Worlds, a fully unified planet, in love, light, and harmony. We also have already perceived, even though this may not be apparent on the surface of your world yet, that approximately what you would call 10 of your years ago, you have made a general, collective, unconscious agreement that you will not annihilate yourselves through what you would call nuclear means. All of the idea of what you may now perceive to be an acceleration of violence on the surface of your planet, in a sense, is the last vestiges of these ideas now being brought to the surface, because in a sense now you know it's safe to do so, because all of this is not going to lead to your annihilation. You see, we have used what we call, to describe your world, your rubber band analogy. You understand the device on your planet you call a rubber band, yes? But let us assume that you have taken this rubber band and stretched it very, very, very far back into the depths of limitation and negativity, as far as you can possibly stretch it. Now you are on the verge of considering exploring the positive side. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you let go of that rubber band? It's going to snap very rapidly and very far onto the other side of positivity, understand? This is the threshold of what you are standing on as a civilization. That's why many of you may be incredulous to understand, well, what do you mean? 50 years? That's all? We're going to be a unified planet in only 50 years? But we've spent thousands of years getting to this point. Yes, you have, because you've been doing it through the idea of limitation. Once you get the understanding that integration is that much more geometrically progressive and unifying, you will understand that all it requires is, as you say, the blink of an eye to accomplish anything you want to accomplish when you really put your mind to it. And you rearrange what you may call your priorities. Understand?
Yes.
So, it is our perception that in general, again, though it may not seem apparent on the surface overall, you are matching the frequency of positive vibration. Only for this reason can we communicate with your world in the way we are communicating now. If, as a world, you had chosen the idea of the path of total destruction, in all likelihood we would not be capable of interacting with you as we are interacting now, because our vibrations would be far too unlike for us to be able to even find you. Understand?
Yes.
Everything is a different frequency. Every dimension, its own vibration. Vibrations that are not alike do not even perceive each other. So you must exhibit some degree of similarity to our collective vibration, or we wouldn't even be having this talk. Now, do understand this as well. And the only reason I can share this with you now is because we perceive you have made the decision on your own to not annihilate yourself. Your planet is your own. You can do anything with it you wish to. It is our understanding that we will never directly interfere with the growth of the world. That, to us, as you would say, is sacrosanct, sacred. You are your own life, you make your own decisions. We cannot interfere, we can only interact by your invitation. However, to some degree there was one exception. If you had decided, in your terminology, to annihilate yourselves by nuclear means, it would not have been possible. Because since it is your world, you're allowed to do whatever you wish with it, as long as you say that it remains in your own backyard. Global nuclear annihilation would tear, as you would say, holes in the interdimensional fabric of space and affect other civilizations that have nothing to do with you. That is not allowed. But understand this as well. Your government has been aware of this fact for a long time, and has actually been given physical demonstrations by many of the spacecraft of the association that your nuclear devices, if they were to be activated, would not function. Your government is aware of this. They know it. And now many more of your public is beginning to understand that your government has been aware of our existence for quite some time, and only now is much of this information coming out into what you call the public mainstream. The more you open channels of communication, not in an attacking way, not in an accusing way, for your government is only what you have created it to be. Your government is you. But if you open up lines of communication in a loving way that allow your government to know you are now willing to take responsibility for the information, then they can begin to share more and more and more and more of the idea of our existence, and not that that is in and of itself so important, but simply that they can then allow more awareness that you can function as a global entity, because it has been done on other worlds, and you can do it too, if you want to. But this information is coming out more and more, and again, within what you call the next 13 of your years to 20 of your years, there will be almost not a living soul on your planet that is not aware of our collective existence. It will be taken for granted by them. Understand?
Yes.
Does this serve you?
Yes, it does.
Well, thank you very much. It is our perception that there will be perhaps but a little time left for this interaction this day of your time. Are there any further sharings at this point? Do continue for now, if there are.
What's the difference or is there between believing and knowing?
All right, thank you. Let us put it in this particular category, or categorization, if you will. First, there is existence itself. Then, the first state of separation is self-awareness, knowingness. When you simply know something, when you are absolutely aligned with what you know is your truth. Then there is belief, which usually has to do with particular definitions that go into the creation of a particular format or experiential universe. Then next comes emotions, which are reactions to things you already believe to be true. Then there are what you typically think of as the infinite can experience itself, and so here you are. There are an infinite number of ways, an infinite number of ways. There is no end to the growth. There is no end to the transformation. And the idea of going from level to level and density to density, as far as at least we can tell, will never, never, never end. Does this answer the question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
How does the Holy Spirit work in this world?
All right. Again, the idea, to some degree, is that our perception of what you call the Holy Spirit is the collective electromagnetic mentality, the actual energy out of which all of your individual minds are created. Spirit, in that sense, meant in this terminology, is literally a physiological phenomenon, an electrical phenomenon, an electromagnetic phenomenon. It is the literal life of your world, of your consciousness. And again, the way it works is as follows. It is an energy sea in which all of you as individual components are immersed. And being immersed in that sea, when you align with it electromagnetically by accelerating your vibration in the ways we have discussed, excitement and so forth, service and so forth, positivity and so forth, you then become, as you say, of the Spirit. And what that basically means is you flow in harmony with all other beings. You telepathically link with all other beings and know all thoughts. Because the idea is that telepathy is actually more precisely defined as telempathy, because it is emotionally activated by love. When you love someone as unconditionally as you can, you identify with them very strongly. When you identify with someone very strongly, you're matching their frequency very closely. When you match their frequency very closely, you are translating the spirit, the electromagnetic energy of consciousness, into the same type of thought pattern at the same time. Telepathy is not literally reading each other's thoughts directly in that sense as you mean it. It is having thoughts so similar at the same time that you simply are on the same wavelength and you know what each other is thinking because you think that way too. Because you love them, you identify with them, you are in the spirit with them, you are immersed in that energy sea of consciousness with them, you love them, you flow with them, you are shining within the light with them. That is the idea of what you call the Holy Spirit and how it moves you. And also that's where the connotation of speaking in tongues comes from. Speaking in tongues is actually a reference to telepathic communication. Simply that you transcend the idea of language altogether. It can manifest to some degree as the idea of manifesting different cultural dialects. But the overall meaning of the phrase actually has to do with being in touch with each other telepathically. That's why, if you have observed this in your society from time to time, individuals that you call being in love with each other will very often know each other's thoughts because they identify so strongly with each other and they are matching their frequencies and they are literally mirroring to each other who they are. Understand? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Tell me.
I was excited to begin to speak about dragons because it's an idea that's been very powerful for me, and I haven't really understood why. Could you speak more about it and perhaps help me to understand its meaning to me and how I might use that now in my life?
To some degree, we perceive that there may be some specific avenues that we will not be allowed to have access to because it would interrupt your own process of growth, but we will assist you where we can. The idea for now is to symbolize, as far as we perceive your energy to be concerned, the idea of the dragon to begin with as ancient wisdom, as that first incarnations upon your earth, very, very old, very ancient, very strongly rooted, not only in the Earth's crystal vibration, but in the vibrations of other dimensions of experience, one of which would very strongly be called or labeled Orion energy. Now, this Orion energy is not necessarily an absolute reference to the star systems that you would call Orion, although there is a connection. And this is something that is a connotation of what you would call a far distant past idea. But in times past, there were very many negative manifestations going on in some stellar systems. Within these stellar systems, there was the removal of physical life in such a manner that it chose to reincarnate in another stellar system, such as your own, to take up the continuation of the exploration of the blending of that polarity. The introduction of that collective energy reincarnationally upon your planet a long time ago is represented by the symbol you call the dragon. And some of it has to do with tying into the analogy of what you call the fall from grace. This is simply the idea of going from one dimensional state of energy to a lower vibrational state of energy. And why it is associated with the idea of, once again, negativity and the dragon being evil in that sense and representative of fire. The idea of the fire is simply the crucible of change itself. The idea of the infinite light itself through which anything can be transformed. But the dragon is basically representative of a collection of consciousness that incarnated upon your planet some time ago to which you simply have strong association.
Are there positive aspects of this?
Oh, absolutely.
It aid me at the time because the symbol is just becoming in
all right. Again, the idea now is that you are regaining a memory of who and what you are and able to transform the old meaning from negative into positive association. Now you can understand simply the dragon as the concept itself of immortality, of eternalness, of wisdom, of knowledge, and the ability in that sense to break free from the bonds of what you have called the definitional limitations you have imposed upon yourself. Perhaps, if you wish, as a simple analogy, go from the idea of what you call a black dragon to a white dragon. If you wish, that's one way to look at it, although we are not saying that the colorations in and of themselves necessarily have to be representative of positive or negativity. But the idea is to use your imagination, and perhaps this is the best suggestion I can give to you. If you have some idea of what it would be like to feel like a positively oriented, wise, and ancient dragon, then act like one. Put all your senses into the visualization and let it manifest in your life in whatever way represents the wisdom you now are tapping within yourself. Understand?
Yes.
Here is the key. And we thank you for bringing this up, for this can be used as another fundamental tool for any and all of you, and apply this anywhere you wish. And this harkens back to what you call the key of your imagination. How many of you really understand what your imagination is for? I'm not counting. This is a scenario as follows. If there is anything in your life that you desire to be, and you don't know how to be, conjure up, as you say, in your mind's eye, in your visualization, in your imagination, a picture, an image of you. The you would prefer to be. See yourself, either literally or symbolically, as the you prefer to be. Create a scenario, an atmosphere, a vision. Then, put all your senses into it. As you say, get involved, get into the image. In other words, what would it feel like to be that you? What would you taste like? How would you smell? How would you see? How would you hear differently? How would you touch? How would you feel? How would you act? What would your attitudes be that are different than the way you're acting now? Get involved. Plug yourself in to the image. Feel the energy of the difference. Feel what it would be like on every level you can to be that person. Then, if there is a situation in your life you don't know how to handle, hand it to that you in your imagination and watch how that you handles it. What's the approach? What's the attitude? What's the positive manifestations occur? Then, all you have to do is mirror the image, mimic it, copy it, and you'll get the same result. That's what your imagination is for. To create the scenario that is representative of the vibration you choose to be, to begin to identify, remember what we said about mirroring and identification, to identify with that vibration, to start acting like that person, because if that person in your imagination is acting differently than you're acting now, then that's an indication of why you may not be getting what you want to get. Act the way that person acts, and you'll get what is representative of the lifestyle of that person you want to be. Be that person now, and you'll have the life that goes along with that person now. So if you find that a symbol, an archetypal symbol works for you, such as the dragon, then examine and explore. What does it mean to be a dragon? What does it mean? It means boldness. It means conviction. It means no one can ignore you. Now that doesn't mean you have to be obnoxious. Doesn't mean you have to always go around stomping and roaring to get your point across. No. But what it does mean is that you stand out in a crowd. And it does mean that you have the conviction to do what you know you are, to act in that way, to know what you stand for, to put it out there, to represent it, and to not worry about the idea of what other people think of you. Those are the little arrows that bounce off of the scales of the dragon. Understand? You pick up that arrow and you pick your teeth with it. And you say, well, thank you for pointing out a certain idea that I can put into my assessment of which way to go. Thank you for your reflection and your suggestions and your advice. I value them and treasure them highly. How many dragons do you depict guarding treasure? The idea of knowledge, treasure itself. The idea of application of that knowledge, intelligence. The razor-sharp edge of the dragon's stare. Be that dragon. That's up to you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Sure. Yes.
I wondered if you could share with us approximately how many members there are of the association, some idea of the number of civilizations,
Scientists.
monitors,
Scientists.
and some idea what they're like.
Oh, well, a few. The idea, first of all, is that now this will be to some degree an arbitrary perspective because there are different levels of the association when you come from different points of view. However, the closest representation to what you would call your physical dimension is as follows. We belong to an association that now contains approximately what you would call 360 different worlds. But we are aware Not that all have been contacted, not that all are a part of our association or even any part of any association. We are aware simply through the process of scanning with our consciousness that within this immediate galaxy and what you would call the neighboring 4 galaxies, thereby considering the local 5 galaxies, and this includes what you would call your galaxy of Andromeda, there are at least no fewer than 67 million inhabited worlds. But the idea is that we have contacted almost none of them in that sense, simply because of the timing of our interactions, what it represents, and simply the timing of their interactions, what it represents. They may have their own associations. Some of them may know of us. Some of them may know nothing of us. But it is our perception that that is a figure that is generally representative of the local 5 galactic groups in terms of the amount of civilizations that there are to discover that would at least have some degree of commonality with you. Now, this does not mean that the life forms are all of the same variety, but there are many of what you would call humanoid in that sense, because that represents a certain level, a certain vibrational dimensional experience, and life expresses itself similarly within a certain range of frequencies. So there are many humanoid, as you would call it, life forms, although if I were to come from my point of view, I could say you are Ethasani-ish, being that I am not exactly like you. The idea is that you will, when you begin to explore the idea of space in the way that we have, usually come upon, again, life forms that are more your style than not, simply because that's the frequency you are used to, and it is therefore more likely that those are the types you will encounter first. As you expand your notion of dimensionality, then you can begin to encounter lifestyles that are very unsimilar to your own. Now, it is our perception that when you begin to explore and interact with other worlds, much in the same way we are interacting with you now, one of the first civilizations you will begin to interact with, in fact, I've actually already began to interact with them in your dream level, is a civilization that is in what you would call the Barnard Star Cluster, as you name it. On one of those worlds is a civilization not unlike your own, but approximately, evolutionarily speaking, where you were on or about, let us say, your Renaissance period, technologically speaking. They are already aware of some of the communications you have had as a society with them on the dream level. And sometimes you actually will find that some of you are actually channeling through some of the members of that society. Now, they do not, in their society, label the different names, the different channels, as different things. They see it all as one phenomena. The word in their language for the entire phenomena of either dream communication or channeling of any sort is simply uweya. That is their term for the entire process. They are not segregated out into different entities. It is all the same level to them. In time, as you expand, you will begin to interact with them in similar ways to the ways we have interacted with you, and in a sense, you can become their UFO. And in time, you can blend and assist them in their transformations again in similar ways to the way we are assisting you. Yours, in certain ways, goes by the label of IRAC. The IRACs have placed upon themselves a very fascinating limitation. Their facial structures are almost completely bony, as you would call it, and they are incapable of expressing any emotionality on their faces whatsoever. It must be expressed completely in different ways. They are of what you would call creamy, whitish, yellow, waxy skin configuration. There is one very unlike your civilization in many ways that operates on a completely different dimensional plane that in your terminology would best translate out in the one moment. That best translates out into the idea in your vocabulary of what you would call the Dilla. Now, the Dilla operate in a completely non-physical sense, and yet they do have, to your perception, of physicality, but they are extremely plastic in their nature, in a sense. They have no real discernible features and can take almost any form they wish. They are of a completely primal dimensional state. They are not really physical as you understand it. But one of their, let us say, prime exports is a sense of humor. They are of a very, very light vibration. Their entire world is very simplified. You would perceive it literally as a smooth sphere with no surface features that do not need to exist until they are required. Then they are literally drawn from the surface in that way to form many different things. The Dilla themselves, in that sense, can merge with the very substance of their world, in that sense, being very much in a plastic or what you would call molten state. The way you would perceive them physically would be through almost nothing but primary colorations in that sense. They would literally appear to be very plastic-like to you, with no discernible features. They can mimic your form, but that is not their natural form. In a sense, they do not really have one, except perhaps what you would call a very flattened oblate spheroid, in what you would call a state of rest, but they do not really rest. There is closer at hand some of the ideas of the civilizations that have been interacting with your society of late in this transformational age. The idea of what you would call Pleiadian society. They are, in a sense, very much like you, humanish in that sense, primarily because many of you are from the same offshoots. They are literally your brothers, sisters, and cousins. And the split off occurred a long time ago. Now you are rejoining many of them and literally rejoining members of your family. Another society will be the society from the star cluster you call Vega Reticulum, and this will be what you would call short in your terms, beings of very wide eye, very pale skin, very enlarged head, and are the ones that are most represented in the idea of the interactions you call the abduction phenomena. Although, if you will allow us, we would prefer the term detainment. Since everything that goes on in those interactions is all from agreement, even though members of your society may not remember having made the agreement, and it is all for the purpose of serving in the transformational age. The idea of any fear that individuals experience in those abductions are the fears that are simply things and ideas that have been suppressed within their own consciousness coming to the surface. Nothing about the interaction itself is fear invoking. Another civilization would be, both to some degree, semi-physiological and completely non-physiological, of a civilization that orbits the star you call Sirius. And Sirius, with our civilization of Ethasani and your civilization of Earth, form a particular triad of consciousness, of which you would say Sirius is at the peak and represents the further steps in the evolution we are going through and you are going through, and which both of us will accomplish in time. The level of consciousness that is mostly in contact with your world that you would call Sirius will be the non-physical sixth density level of consciousness and goes by the terminology Sistine. Now, they have been in telepathic communication with members of your society for quite some time and are responsible for some of the mythological manifestations in your perception of what you would call the amphibious gods, both in what you would call your Sumerian cultures and in some of your African tribal cultures and American Indian recognition. The idea simply is that because they exist in an energy sea, you have translated them as amphibious beings, although they do have a semi-physical counterpart that to some degree is physiologically amphibious. One of the reasons for this particular manifestation being very strongly connected to your planet also has to do with the fact that as we scan your Earth, we find that there is not one, but two alien civilizations upon your planet. Land human and water cetacean, dolphin and whales are thinking, self-incarnating, self-aware souls like you. They are not animals, as you classify them in that sense. So in a sense, recognize that your planet is, I shall say, blessed with two civilizations that can work side by side and learn to love one another and grow in creativity. They have already begun to assist you by entering your dream states and teaching you how to play in spontaneous ecstasy. Go to them, share with them. They love you. But because of their environment, they have been in telepathic communication with many different civilizations off your planet for quite some time, especially a strong connection with the Sirius civilization, since they have much in common as a consciousness and are telepathic in that sense, and exist to some degree in a buoyant environment. Whales are to some degree the embodiment in physical terms of the higher consciousness of a dolphin. You simply do not have a physiological manifestation of your higher consciousness because the gravity of your world would not support it. So it is up to you to be both the manifestation of the individual consciousness and the higher consciousness itself, but usually you relegate the higher consciousness into non-physical terminology, whereas the higher consciousness of the dolphin can manifest physically as a whale because of the buoyant environment of your ocean. But they are there to assist you, to love you, and when you blend as one society, that will also make it easier for you to interact with other whole societies. But now look at this. Look at the sparkling opportunity you have created. You don't have to go anywhere in order to interact with an alien civilization. You have one in your very ocean. Learn to communicate with them, and they will teach you much about the way you will be communicating with all other civilizations that you will encounter. There are approximately, at this time, anywhere from between 17 to 20 different civilizations interacting in various ways with your civilization, assisting you in this transformational age. But the idea will fluctuate to some degree, and again, primarily, the decision is up to you, and the empowerment is up to you. Will this have answered your question sufficiently? Well, thank you very much. Cutting! Yes.
I was wondering, an animal gonna have souls also?
Oh, yes. And they are consciousness. But they are a different type of consciousness. They are also reincarnational beings in that sense, but they do not create nor need to create the analytical thought process that you do as a self-aware reflection of the primary crystal of infinite creation. They are, to some degree, let us say, your creations, your projections as a collective consciousness. They are guides and reflections for all of you, and can always assist you in reconnecting to the natural state of your existence. They are telepathic. Again, telepathy being a very emotional idea and vibrating in the primal sense of love. And you can learn anything and everything, not only from what you call animals, but also from the idea of what you call plants and mineral consciousness. But it is all made of consciousness. And in a sense, it is all a soul, the oversoul of your entire planet. So by all means, they are aware. By all means, they are a soul. By all means, they are consciousness. It is simply that they do not have to doubt themselves. Does that answer the question sufficiently? Thank you very much. And for them as well, we thank you.
Just one more question.
Oh,
Bashar,
yes.
I've been doing some telepathic communicating with dolphins, and can you give me any guidance that would help me amplify that?
Absolutely. At your soonest opportunity, go and physically play with them in your ocean. Learn their environment, let them learn yours, really become friends in that sense. Really interact in every way you can. Let them rub off on you. All right? Thank you very much. And at this timing, allow us to project to each and every one of you, once again, our deepest appreciation, our unconditional love, and our ultimate ecstasy at being granted this opportunity to interact and share and co-create this dream time with all of you. Remember that you are all dreaming right now. Wake up and live the dream you prefer to, because your physical reality is only what you dream it to be. We thank you for this gift. Our love to you all. A fond and pleasant good day.